Today's guest is Tido Carriero. Tido is the co-founder and CEO at Koala, an innovative new B2B intelligence platform. After spending 15 years at companies like Segment, Dropbox, and Facebook, Tido started Koala to help B2B go-to-market teams identify and engage leads through first-party signals in real time. Here are 3 things that I learned from Tido: the difference between first and third-party intent data, the common sources of third-party data, and how does reverse IP lookup even work, and how B2B teams are leveraging Koala today to grow pipe. So let's get into it. Yeah, so welcome, Tido, to The Marketing Scientist. This is going to be awesome. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a little while. The first question that I am actually going to ask you is, do you remember how we met? Do you remember the first time we actually talked?
I assume we were talking about Dropbox for Business, but I do not remember the specific interaction. So let's go back to
We're gonna rewind the
years.
clock. Exactly 10 years. That's right. I was on the BizOps team, and I was tasked with hey, let's figure out if we can improve the conversion rate on the pricing page for Dropbox teams. And I'm like, well, we don't really have engineering help. Maybe I can just do it myself. And you were brave enough to give me production access to let me push code. And I'm like, what? Is this for real? Is this happening? And so that was pretty cool. So it's very, very kind of you to enable the BizOps and marketing team in making that happen.
My pleasure. It sounds on brand for me. I used to have a little meme at Facebook, which was like the Dos Equis guy, and said, I don't like to test code, but when I do it in production. And that was sort of like my big image for most of my career at Facebook and Dropbox. So I believe the story. I don't remember the specifics of it, but it sounds very plausible.
My co-founder Pete, who you also know, always reminds me how many times I caused production to fail, not before it actually failed, but that was funny. Anyway, so tell me how you made the switch from Facebook and Dropbox to now working on go-to-market tech and enabling salespeople and marketing, right? Very different sort of thing. So what inspired you to actually even get into this part of business?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think it actually all traces back to a call I had when I was in college. I had just accepted an offer at Facebook. Facebook was pretty small at the time. When I joined, it was about 100 engineers, about 500 total. I was the 3rd engineer on the ads team. But sorry, the call that I was starting the story with, I was talking to my future manager, and they said, "Oh, congrats on accepting your offer. What team would you like to work on?" And I said, "Well, you're my manager. Shouldn't you tell me what to work on?" I didn't quite get the question that I would have the ability to choose the team. They're like, "Oh, you should definitely work on ads," because basically no one wanted to work on ads. So I was like, "Okay, cool, sounds good." And so, as I just mentioned, I was the 3rd member of the Facebook ads team. But I think it all sort of started there, and I fell in love. I mean, obviously Facebook B2C company in pretty much every sense of the word, but and certainly at the time was completely focused on how do we tip countries, how do we get growth, how do we make this a stickier and stickier experience, because we were at sub 100 million monthly actives when I joined, and so that was just the name of the game. That was the complete focus for the company. But I was in this tiny little corner that was the B2B part of Facebook, which, by the way, was the thing keeping all the lights on. And I fell in love with that. I could not believe the state of the tooling for the ad operations team. So I was always going over to their side of the campus and trying to figure out how I could help them. So I was kind of nights and weekends doing go-to-market tooling. But I don't know. I was just in love with this idea that this software was actually the software that kept the lights on. There were all of these people working hard, doing these operational things that were not super exciting. And there were tools I could think of watching their workflows that made it better. So I would say even 6 months into my professional career, which is about 15 years ago at this point, I was already obsessed with the idea of go-to-market tooling. So though it looks weird from a resume perspective, I think it's actually it's always been a passion of mine. And, that was the first thing when I got to Dropbox. I was like, where is the Dropbox for Business product? I see we have a sales team selling it. What are they selling? We used to joke, I don't know if you remember this, but our first feature for Dropbox for Business was centralized billing, meaning you could take like 7 pro accounts and put them on one credit card. That was it when I got there. And so, we started the long journey toward making like a true enterprise product. But yeah, I think always been a passion. I think obviously now at Koala, I get to do this passion full time as like the core center of what it is we're doing. But yeah, I think that's the origin story.
That's awesome. No, I think now it makes complete sense, right? The story arc has always been there, and I'm excited to see sort of more folks investing in improving marketing and sales, core workflows and core technologies. Because I have to say, there's a lot of software, but as you and I know, like they're not always great. So excited to see what you all are doing. Okay, so I'm going to jump straight into Koala. Now, what you all are doing, and if I understand correctly, it's really lighting up first-party data, if I'm not wrong. Is it a fair way to talk about what Koala is up to, or like tell me in your words how you think about what Koala does?
I think those words are perfect. Yeah, I think we are after first-party website intent data, but it's not just the website intent data. We also use like the product analytics data, and what we're really trying to do is create a set or an understanding of everything going on in an account, and then everything going on at the profile level for every single person. And obviously, when someone first shows up at a website, you, if you're following privacy laws anyway, you can't know exactly who they are. But then once they start to engage, whether it's a form fill, logging in to the application, creating a free account, interacting with emails, then you can start to de-anonymize who they are and start to like really understand at the prospect level who they are. So very similar to like ABM type tools, but it's a little bit more nuanced. It's like if ABM tools had a baby with like a product analytics tool, that joined context ends up being insanely useful for SDRs, BDRs, even AEs when they're trying to navigate a deal cycle.
Makes a lot of sense. You and I have exchanged notes on this, and I often find our sort of audience asking about exactly that, right? Which is, hey, help me light up what's happening on my website. Now, our focus is different. I'm not going to talk about that, but it's really cool. Now, talk to me about this whole, one of the things that I've struggled with as a marketer is there's a lot of data providers out there in the market, right? There's obviously sort of first party data, which is like data that you have uniquely about your audience, whether it's a prospect or a customer or a user. There's second party data, which I kind of think of as data that a Google, a Meta, a LinkedIn would tell you based on your own accounts in those platforms. And then there's third party data, which is like everything else, right? This is like what's happening on the internet. And I think people understand first party data and second party data. Third party data, there's a lot of like confusion about what it is. So I'd love to get into it. What is your take on the sources of these third party mysterious? We've got every contact. We know exactly what their intent is. What makes up that data set?
It's a great question. I've been trying to go a lot deeper into this, mostly because I'm curious. But it's very mysterious, and no one really knows because no one really wants to disclose like what the supply chain for this is because it doesn't feel great. I'll give an example of some of the supply chain that I've found that's pretty interesting. So if you install a Chrome extension, let's say ad blockers, you click through some stuff as you install that ad blocker that I'm sure you do not read the 3,000 words of text as you click through that. And you may be asking yourself, like, how can I get such a great service that does this thing for me and it doesn't cost anything and it does the like Wikipedia style donation requests like once a year? Well, it turns out that ad blockers and lots of other Chrome extensions sell the data of them watching all of your Chrome extension, which is like what you are, all of the stuff you're doing, form fills, etc., to people who want to do it. Typically, the way that sale works is ad blocker will install your pixel in their bundle, and then they'll charge you 50K a year or whatever to do it. Um, so those are examples of the kinds of data that is third party data. There's like tons of other ones as well, but to give you a sense of like what the business model tends to look like, it tends to be some kind of like freemium surface area that has very broad distribution, and like people are agreeing to stuff, but they're just like clicking through because like no one reads that stuff. And then on the other end of it are the people who care a lot about the data and are putting together these data sets that will do something with it. That's like one type of it. Maybe the other type that's like very interesting to me is people will make like content farms. So like, let's say you wanted to provide an intent signal about customer data platforms. My last job was at leading the product team at Segment, so I'm just going to use customer data platforms as an example. You could go put a bunch of content on the internet about customer data platforms. You probably like wouldn't care a ton about quality, but what you'd really want to make sure is that you're ranking for SEO. And then you could like watch all of that stuff come in. And then if you had enough of those content farms going, you could basically like sell anything you figure out about the visitor data as these like topic searches that then make their way. So there's other ways of getting it other than just like Chrome extensions, but like that's kind of the different types of tactics.
So that's great, right? So we are talking about essentially these, publishers of content or software that can relate an IP address to a particular type of content, whether it's a keyword, whether it's a broader theme. How do people go from that IP address to a real human being? Like, what is the supply chain there for knowing who it is that's behind that IP address or which company it is?
Yeah, so the supply chain is pretty similar. So the Chrome extension, for instance, has both like, Pranav at paramark.com. And then the question is how much care is taken in anonymizing that. And so let's phone in like GDPR and CCPA, which are these like new privacy regulations that have come in the last 10 years. All of these ABM tools have been very specifically designed to not divulge PII, personally identifiable information. So it's okay to say, someone from this company is doing something, but it's not okay to say Bob from this company is doing something. So I would say most of these IP to account services have actually similar supply chains, but they are truncating their knowledge a little bit to not include that PII. And they're doing it intentionally because that is sort of in the spirit of all of these new laws coming. But I would say the supply chain is fairly similar, and it's more of like, how privacy friendly do you want to be as you're like handling this? And it seems to me that the law has like really made it pretty clear that this account level stuff is okay and is like here to stay. And then this person level stuff is not okay and, may or may not stay. The other thing that's, if you're just doing IP to account, you also have a number of other advantages. For instance, you can go to the ISPs directly, and the ISPs directly can tell you that like this IP range, maps to Nike, and this IP range maps to IBM. So that's actually the initial source of the IP to account databases is these IP data sets, and then you end up like layering in some of these other data sources to make it more accurate, make it work in like the land of remote work, all of those kinds of things. But again, not a deep expert here, but this is sort of what I've pieced together as I've explored the space.
No, this is great. Hey, what is probably 10 times more than the average marketer or a salesperson who's looking at these technologies knows, right? So this is incredibly helpful information. So in this space, why didn't you go after third-party data? Why did you choose to kind of really focus on first-party? And how do you recommend marketers or salespeople think about the trade-offs between first-party versus third-party?
Yeah, I think zooming like way out, like, and we just sort of ask ourselves like what we're trying to do as go-to-market teams. I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to like help prospects and customers like through their journey, and we're trying to gather as much context as we have about prospecting customers so that we can be genuinely helpful. I think sales at its best is being genuinely helpful. Marketing at their best are being genuinely helpful, maybe at a slightly different part in the journey. Marketing obviously a little bit more on like the initial education pieces, sales a little bit more on the like, okay, like it looks like you're consuming like a lot of bottom of funnel content. Like what if I help connect the dots a little bit for this set of like 4 people who all seem to be like trying to research this thing but maybe can't quite figure it out. And so I think if your goal is to do something that is genuinely helpful, I really think the best thing to do is to like understand all of the people already in your store, understand who they are, if they've told you who they are, and understand if they haven't told you who they are, at least at the account level, like kind of what's heating up, and see if you can figure out like, okay, at this point, it feels like, hey, it's worth doing some prospecting and trying to break into this account. But we just felt like, in this effort to like really help go-to-market teams actually help customers, first-party data is the only relevant thing, because it's the only thing that's like real enough that you can kind of see what's going on and like help. And then the other thing is, as a marketer, it's your core data asset. It's one of the most important things you have. It's the thing that is unique to your company, which is all of the data about how people are interacting in your store. And so I think if you really want to develop a sustainable long-term edge, it's like understanding all of those people in the store, what their behaviors are, which items that they're picking up or starting to look at are leading to like sales conversations. Like that is the way to get a durable edge. That is what companies spend large amounts of time, really large companies spend large amounts of time and data science resources, like figuring out, how to build that intent model. And so it was just pretty obvious for us that we wanted to help the startups that can't afford the like 4-person data science team, like go figure that out and get involved with companies at an earlier phase of their journey.
That's awesome.
But I was very validated. I saw this MIT study that, oh, sorry.
No, go.
I was just I was very validated. There's this MIT study that recently came out that like basically showed that all of these third-party data sources were completely awash. I'll send you the link. You can add it to the notes. But I was like, I knew that must be the case. That is very satisfying for me to read.
You and I referenced the same study.
That was not the reason, but
yeah, no, we both ended up on the same study. I know exactly what you're talking about. And for listeners, I think what I read and remember from there is like, if you're using third-party data, even something as simple as an IT decision maker, right? You just like go ask one of these sort of third-party data firms to provide you a list of IT decision makers and you cold call them, right? Or you email them. Your hit rate, your win rate is the same as random prospecting into the general population. And so what is the real value add of that third-party data? And so, and this is the stuff that it looks like it's hard to test and experiment, but one of the things that we encourage our customers to do is run a true control test. When you get that third-party data, if you're curious about it, if you want to do it, have half your account, right? If you're doing an account-based strategy, have half your accounts using that third-party data and half your accounts not. And you let your sales team lose and see what happens. Do you get increased conversions, meetings, pipeline from the control versus test? And you'll know for a fact whether this is effective or not. So we're big fans of first-party data and testing if you are going to go into more exotic data sources for your go-to-market activity. So very cool. Okay, talk to me about, you've now been working with, I think, hundreds of customers, right? Hundreds of customers, is that right?
Hundreds of customers, yes.
Okay. Talk to me about the most interesting use cases for Koala. Like, what are the most successful folks doing with the Koala data on a week-to-week, on a month-to-month basis and having, great results?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorites is we ended up working with like a lot of developer companies. I don't know if that's just like where our design partner network was and where our kind of like our core energy is as like a very technical company. But I love these because I think they're extra hard because like the last thing a developer wants to do is talk to a salesperson. And like, obviously, if you're selling, some kind of developer software, like that's exactly what you need to facilitate. What I would just say is, in general, technical documentation is this like gold mine. And there's lots of different variants I've seen work well, but technical documentation is this moment where a developer is on your site and they're trying to figure out how something works. They're not just viewing the technical docs for fun or because they love the CSS. Like they have some problem that they're trying to figure out, and you have this like very narrow window, which is if you actually know the answer and can help them with their project and they are stuck on their project right now, you can get there quickly. And like, it's just a great way to start a relationship on the right foot, because the sales team, SE team, whoever it is, can show up with actual like, creating clarity for the person. The developer doesn't feel like they're being sold to. They feel like, oh, I have this person here who like knows that I have this problem and like they're going to help me solve it. And I think it also really makes a case for like getting to this intent data in real time. Like you want to get to it, as fast as you get to an inbound lead, because developers solve their own problems so quickly. I see this all the time with my co-founders. Like we were just looking into getting like a vector database set up, and like it was like my co-founder Neto's like most urgent problem for about 8 hours, and he was like ready to like pay some consultant like tons of money to like walk him through this. And then like he solved the problem, the moment passed, and he's like not at all interested in buying anymore. So I would just say selling to developers and sort of this use case around technical docs has been like one of my favorites. If I were to pick a particular play, it's actually not having a particular play is not having an AE reach out, but like having an SE reach out, or some kind of like deeper technical resource. Sometimes companies are like, oh, well, I don't have enough SEs to staff that. And I would just say like, you should be rethinking your go-to-market strategy if like you have more interested people that like are in this moment where they could be interacting with you and engaging with you, and you need like a more technical resource to get that first conversation going. Surely there's a business model that can support that. So anyway, I think that's like one of my favorites that stands out.
That's a great one. And if I think about it, you can actually apply the same play on other parts of the business, right? So you could do the exact same play on your support docs. You could do the exact same play on your use cases docs, right? If you have a broad sort of set of use cases for your product and you've got like these 20 pages lined up and people are looking at those specific use cases, it's such a great sort of first party signal.
So I think for those help center kind of support articles, there's a couple that tend to like really jump off the map when you look at like the signal reports. Ones that are about rate limits or product limits or like usage limits or some kind of consumption is a great one. There's sometimes articles about, or like guides about like rolling things out more broadly to production, whether it's like white glove onboarding or like, hub and spoke management. One of our customers has like a doc about sort of how they like recommend like kind of longer term architecture within their product. But those kinds of guides often are like pretty bottom of funnel intent of like, okay, I have this like urgent problem right now that I'm trying to figure out so that I can scale this thing. Sure enough, that content consumption correlates very heavily with SQOs being created. It's not all articles, but I think it's really drilling into the ones that seem to correlate with bottom of funnel activity already, then kind of asking yourself, is there a genuinely helpful nudge I can do here when someone is consuming this? And the answer is not always yes. Like the other things that show up a lot in signal reports is like people reading like the terms of service on the legal side. Possibly you could have like a lawyer reach out and be like, do you have any questions? But like, that seems a little bit over the top to me. So there's also just sort of business judgment as well. When you see one of these things that is a heavily correlating to conversion, is there something I can actually do to kind of help grease the journey? And the most creative folks are usually able to think of like another piece of content that you can add in, or you can make an offer for like a direct line to answer questions over email, not ask for a meeting, a bunch of different tactics you can try there. Lots of gold, but I do think the real key to like scaled success here is figuring out how I can actually be helpful, because it's like being genuinely helpful that gets you the meeting, gets you the op, and like guides people through. which is, I think we just forgot about that somewhere in the last 10 years as we like spammed everyone's inbox further and further, that the goal here really of a GTM team is to be helpful.
What a great note to bring this to a close. I couldn't agree more. And one of the things that I talk to our customers about is really measuring your entire go-to-market from a customer's lens rather than from your lens, right? If they are raising their hand and saying, I want to talk to you, I want to check out pricing, I want to explore the product, I want to read this guide, that is true intent. And I feel like Koala is so well positioned to then bring that to life for customers. So thank you so much, Tido, for coming on. We'll have you on again in a few weeks or few months as the product sort of continues to grow and explore some other use cases. But thanks again. What can people do to get in touch with you? Do you want them to connect with you on LinkedIn? Go to Koala's website? What's the best thing to do?
LinkedIn is perfect. Yeah, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I am Tido, Tido Carriero, and I'm sure Pranav can link us there. But yeah, I'd love to chat if any of this is interesting. I recently wrote a guide about website de-anonymization that goes into all of this in an insane amount of depth that I'm about to publish. So would love to share that if folks are curious to learn more.
That sounds wonderful. All right, have a great rest of the week, and we'll catch up soon.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me, Pranav.
Thank you, Tido. Well, there you go, folks. That was Tido, co-founder and CEO at Koala. We'll have many more fun and insightful conversations, so tune in again next week. See you then.